Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I bought my house 5 years ago thinking everything would be peaceful. The neighborhood seemed quiet, the street was calm, and my neighbors looked normal enough. The couple living to my left were in their 70s, and for the first few months, we got along fine. We'd acknowledge each other when we crossed paths, talk about the weather or the neighborhood. Nothing deep, just the usual polite interactions you'd expect from neighbors. Things started falling apart last summer. My partner had a friend staying with us for a bachelor trip, and the friend parked his car in front of the older couple's house for about a day. It wasn't blocking their driveway or preventing them from parking. They owned a huge truck and a Jeep, and even with the friend's car sitting there, they had plenty of room for both vehicles. The house on their other side didn't have any cars either, so they could have parked over there if they really needed extra space. It seemed like such a minor thing that I didn't think twice about it, but it was a massive problem for them. When my partner stepped outside that day, the old man was standing in his driveway making this vulgar jerking off motion with his hand. He just stood there glaring at my partner while making that gesture. My partner came back inside looking uncomfortable and confused. I was furious when he told me what happened, but I tried to convince myself it was just a one-time thing. Maybe the guy was having a bad day or something set him off. Except it wasn't a one-time thing. The old man had done the exact same gesture to my partner months before over something equally stupid. That's when it really hit me that these people were actively looking for reasons to cause problems. They weren't just grumpy old folks, they were hostile on purpose. After that second incident, we decided to stop parking in front of their house whenever we could avoid it. Not because they had any legal right to that space on the public street, but because we figured it wasn't worth the hassle. I told myself they weren't worth the energy it would take to deal with them, but inside I was completely done being friendly. No more polite waves, no more small talk. If they wanted to act like aggressive jerks, they could do it without any pretense of civility from me. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I had the day off work. Around 8 in the morning, someone knocked on the door. I was still half asleep and figured it was probably a delivery or something unimportant, so I ignored it and went back to sleep. Later that morning, my partner headed out for his therapy appointment. When he came back inside a moment later, he had an interesting update. My partner said that our neighbor had stopped him outside and told him they'd call the police on us. The neighbor said we'd parked too close to their car. He told my partner that the officer who came out was planning to ticket me, but the neighbor had graciously offered to talk to us first instead of letting me get the ticket. My partner, who hates confrontation more than anything, just shrugged it off and left for his appointment. He didn't seem worried about the whole thing. When he told me about it 4 hours later after getting home, I immediately smelled something fishy. First of all, I'd parked in front of my own house, not theirs. Second, I'd left roughly 2 feet of space between my car and theirs, which was more than enough. Third, if a cop was planning to ticket me for illegal parking, he would have just written the ticket, or he would have at least left a note on my door or my windshield. The entire story sounded like complete lies to me, so I decided to test their patience a little. I went outside and repositioned my car so it was closer to theirs. Instead of the 2 feet of space I'd left before, now there was only about 1 foot between our vehicles. Still completely legal, still not blocking anything, but definitely closer than before. When I closed my car door, I turned toward their house with a huge smile and threw up a peace sign with my fingers. I knew they'd see every second of it because they have security cameras pointed at every angle of their property, including one that captures my entire front lawn. I wanted them to know their little intimidation tactic hadn't worked. Then I called the non-emergency police number and asked to speak with the officer who'd supposedly visited my house that morning. When I got him on the phone, I laid out the whole situation for him. He started laughing and let out this long, tired sigh. He told me he'd never had any intention of ticketing me, and that when he'd told my neighbor that, the old man had gotten visibly angry and irritated. The officer was really cool about the whole thing. He even offered to check on our house while we're away on our honeymoon next month, which I thought was incredibly generous of him. A couple hours went by and then I noticed a police car parked in front of the neighbor's house again. The old man had called the cops a second time and showed them his security footage of me moving my car closer. He tried to say that I'd flipped him off in the video, but fortunately the officer could clearly see that I'd made a peace sign, not giving him the middle finger. The officer showed up at my door next, and I let him come inside. I explained the full history of what had been going on with these neighbors over the past year. I told him about the obscene gestures, the constant baseless complaints, and the lies about me being on the verge of getting ticketed when I'd done nothing wrong. I also mentioned that our neighbors on the other side have had their own serious issues with this couple. Those neighbors have brown skin, and from what we've pieced together, the old man has directed some pretty racist behavior and comments toward them and their children. The officer was completely understanding about everything. He acknowledged that he was stuck in the middle of a petty neighborhood dispute, but he made it very clear that, as long as I wasn't breaking any laws, I had every right to park wherever I wanted on the public street. He basically gave me permission to keep doing exactly what I was doing, as long as I stayed within legal boundaries. I thanked him and promised him I would. After the officer left, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It wasn't some huge dramatic win, but it felt like the beginning of something. I've decided I'm going to keep parking my car exactly 1 foot away from their Jeep right there in front of my own house. If that old man wants to keep wasting police resources by calling them about perfectly legal parking, that's his decision to make. I'm sure all that anger and stress can't be doing his blood pressure any favors at his age, and if he keeps up this harassment, I'm not even going to bother answering the door for the police anymore. Instead, I'll file an official harassment complaint and look into getting a restraining order. The police already know this couple very well because they call constantly about all sorts of imagined problems. Our neighbors on the right had to involve the police when the old man started making threats toward them and their kids. My partner and I are planning to move within the next year or two anyway, but until that happens, I work from home and have plenty of time on my hands. I'm enjoying this little power struggle. I inherited some money from my grandmother when she passed away 2 years ago. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to finally think about buying my own place. The timing felt right because I was tired of renting in London and throwing money away every month on a cramped flat that would never be mine. My mom died when I was 19. She had breast cancer and fought it as hard as she could, but in the end, it took her from us. Before she got really sick, she used to take me on holiday to this seaside town every summer. We'd walk along the beach, eat fish and chips, and she'd tell me stories about when she was young. After she passed, I took her ashes to that same beach and scattered them in the water. It felt like bringing her home to a place she loved. I started looking at properties in that town. The prices were insane. Most houses were going for upwards of £800,000. It's one of those sought-after spots in England where everyone wants to live. I was about to give up when I found a listing for £325,000. The house needed a lot of work, the kitchen was from the 70s, the bathroom was falling apart, and the whole place needed rewiring. But the location was perfect. It was a 5-minute walk from where I scattered my mom's ashes, 8 minutes to the train station so I could get to London for work twice a week, and right by the beach where I could go running every morning. I put in an offer and somehow got it. The builders worked on the major structural stuff until after New Year's Day. I couldn't even step inside properly until then because there was so much going on. Once they finished, I started doing what I could myself, painting walls, putting up shelves, trying to make it feel like home. A few weeks ago, I was outside working on the front garden when an Amazon delivery van pulled up. The driver got out holding a package and looked at the house next door, then at me. He asked if I could take a package for my neighbor since nobody was answering the door. He held out the package so I could see the label. The name on it made my stomach drop. It was a really unique spelling, not something you see every day. I knew exactly who it belonged to. My former friend from university, the one who stole my academic work and nearly ruined my degree. I had to go through a whole investigation because of her. It was the worst few months of my life trying to prove that I hadn't plagiarized when she was the one who copied me. I told the driver I couldn't take it and that he'd have to try again later. He shrugged and took it back to the van. I went inside and tried not to think about it. When we were friends, she told me she was from this town. I told her I was from a different seaside resort about an hour away. I never thought about it much at the time, never imagined I'd end up living here. And definitely never imagined I'd end up living right next door to her and her parents. I didn't hear anything for a few days. I thought maybe she didn't know, maybe she wouldn't find out. But then last week she showed up at my door. She didn't knock politely, she hammered on it like she was trying to break it down. I opened the door and there she was, red in the face and furious. She demanded to know what I was doing living there. I told her I bought a house, same as she did. She said I needed to move because this was her street, and I couldn't just show up here. I explained that I could live wherever I wanted, and that I didn't know she lived there when I bought the place. She said she didn't care, and that I needed to leave. She was shouting so loud that neighbors started coming out of their houses. People were standing in their doorways and gardens, watching us. An older couple from across the street looked concerned. A man a few doors down was filming on his phone. I told her I wasn't moving because I just spent months renovating the place and it was my home now. She accused me of doing it on purpose and trying to harass her. I explained again that I didn't even know she lived there until the Amazon driver showed up and that this was just a coincidence. She said she wanted me gone and that she was going to make my life hell if I didn't leave. I told her that wasn't going to happen and that I was staying. She stood there staring at me for a long moment, then walked off back to her house and slammed the door so hard I thought the frame would crack. Since then I've been getting messages from relatives, people who somehow heard about what happened. They're telling me I'm being unreasonable, that I should move to keep the peace, that I'm causing tension in the neighborhood. One cousin even said I was being petty and childish for refusing to sell up and find somewhere else. But I don't see it that way. I didn't move here to bother her. I moved here because it's close to where my mom's ashes are, because I can run on the beach every morning, because I can afford it, and because it's exactly what I was looking for. What happened at university was years ago. I've moved on from it. She's the one making it into a drama now. A few days after the big scene in the street, I got a letter pushed through my door. It was from her parents asking me politely to consider selling and moving somewhere else to avoid any further problems. They said their daughter was very upset and that it would be better for everyone if I just left. I wrote back and explained that I had no intention of moving and that their daughter was the one who caused problems years ago, not me. The next week, she started parking her car right in front of my house instead of her own driveway. It was petty and obvious. Then she started playing loud music late at night. I called the council about the noise and they sent her a warning letter. The music stopped after that. Then yesterday, I got a knock on my door from the older couple across the street. They said they wanted to apologize for judging me at first. Apparently, my former friend had been going around telling people I was stalking her and that I moved there to torment her. But then, one of the neighbors who knows her family mentioned that she'd been in trouble at university for cheating, and people started putting two and two together. The couple said they believed my side now and that most of the street did too. My former friend hasn't spoken to me since. She stares at me whenever she sees me, but she keeps her distance. Her parents avoid eye contact. The rest of the neighbors have been friendly enough. One even invited me over for tea last week. I'm not leaving. This is my home now, and one person being upset about it isn't going to change that. I wake up every morning, go for my run on the beach, and visit the spot where I scattered my mom's ashes. That's what matters to me, not some drama from years ago that she can't let go of. I was at the mall with my younger sister on a Saturday afternoon when the whole thing started. She'd been bugging me all week to go shopping with her, saying I needed to get out more after my breakup 3 months back. I finally gave in because she was right. I've been holed up in my apartment for too long. The blouse I was wearing that day was something I'd bought just yesterday from a boutique called Style Haven across town. It was emerald green with delicate lace around the collar, and I'd gotten it on sale for $30 instead of the usual $60. I was so excited about it that I wore it straight out of the store. Big mistake though, I completely forgot to remove the price tag hanging from the back of my neck. We'd been at this clothing store for maybe 20 minutes when my sister wandered off to look at shoes. I was flipping through a clearance rack when this woman walked up behind me. She was in her late 40s, wearing expensive looking clothes and carrying a designer purse. She reached toward my back without saying anything first. I turned around fast. She asked where I'd found the blouse I was wearing. I was confused and asked her what she meant. She said she'd been searching the whole store for this exact blouse and wanted to know which section it came from. I explained it wasn't from this store. I told her I bought it yesterday at a different shop. She stared at me like I just said something crazy. She pointed at my collar and said she could see the tag right there. I realized what was happening and stepped back. I admitted I'd forgotten to remove the tag but insisted I really had bought this somewhere else. This was my own clothing I was wearing. She scoffed and said that made no sense. She asked why anyone would walk around wearing clothes with tags still attached. Then she accused me of trying to steal from the store. My stomach dropped. People nearby were starting to look over. I said again that I wasn't stealing anything. I explained I purchased this blouse yesterday from Style Haven for $30. I even offered to show her my receipt if she wanted proof. She ignored that completely. She demanded I tell her where in the store I'd gotten it because she wanted to buy one too. I was getting frustrated now. I told her for the third time that it wasn't from this store. It was mine and I was wearing it. Her face changed then. She grabbed my arm hard. I tried pulling away, but her grip was surprisingly strong for someone her size. She said I was lying because she'd seen the tag with her own eyes. She said she wanted that blouse and I was being selfish by refusing to help her find it. I raised my voice and told her to let go of me. She didn't. Instead, she grabbed the collar of my blouse with both hands and yanked down as hard as she could. I heard the fabric tear. I screamed. She was pulling at the sleeves now, trying to get the whole thing off me. My bra was showing. Half the store could see me. I was trying to cover myself and push her away at the same time, but she wouldn't stop. People were yelling. Someone shouted for security. Then my sister came running from the shoe section like she was back on the soccer field. She'd played competitively for 8 years and she put every bit of that training into tackling this woman. She hit her from the side and both of them went crashing to the floor. The woman's designer purse went flying. My sister rolled her over onto her stomach and sat on her back, pinning both arms down. She yelled at the woman not to move. A young employee rushed over with a jacket and helped me cover up. I was shaking badly. My hands wouldn't stay still. Other customers had their phones out recording everything. The woman on the floor was screaming that she was being assaulted and she'd sue everyone. She kept saying I'd stolen the blouse from the store. The manager came rushing over. He took one look at the situation and immediately pulled out his phone to call the police. 2 other staff members came to help my sister keep the woman down. She was still thrashing and screaming about the blouse. The manager told her she needed to stop moving because the police were coming. She yelled that she was the victim here. She said I was a thief and everyone was defending me instead of doing the right thing. The manager turned to me with concern in his eyes. He asked if I was okay and if I needed medical help. I said I just needed my shirt fixed. I asked if someone could help me. An older employee took me to the back room, while the chaos continued out front. I looked at what was left of my blouse. The left sleeve was completely ripped off. There was a huge tear down the front that exposed most of my bra. The lace collar was shredded. It was completely ruined. I put on the jacket they'd given me and tried to calm down. My hands were still shaking. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. I could hear their radios from the back room. When I came back out, my sister was still sitting on the woman. The woman had stopped fighting, but she was still insisting loudly that I was a shoplifter. 2 officers walked in and immediately took control. They helped my sister stand up. One of them handcuffed the woman while she continued yelling. The first officer told her she needed to calm down and explain what happened. She said I'd stolen a blouse from the store. She said she'd seen the tag and was trying to stop a thief. She claimed everyone had attacked her for doing the right thing. The manager had his tablet ready. He told the officer I hadn't stolen anything. He said I'd walked into the store already wearing the blouse. He showed them the security footage that clearly showed me entering the building fully dressed. He explained the woman had attacked me and tried to forcibly strip my clothing off. The officer watched the footage carefully. His jaw tightened. He turned back to the woman in handcuffs. He asked if she'd really attacked me and tried to remove my clothes in the middle of a public store. She insisted I was stealing. She said she was helping. The officer shook his head. He told her I'd been wearing my own personal clothing. He said she'd committed assault and battery. He said attempted theft as well since she'd tried to take my property. He told her she was under arrest. They started walking her toward the door. She was still screaming the whole way about how unfair this was and how I was the real criminal. The second officer stayed behind to take statements from me, my sister, the manager, and 3 customers who'd witnessed everything. My sister walked over and put her arm around my shoulders. She asked if I was all right. I told her I'd been better, but thanked her for jumping in. She said that's what little sisters do. The manager felt terrible about what happened. He said everything I'd planned to buy that day would be free. He also gave me a $75 gift card to come back whenever I wanted. He provided copies of all the security footage for my police report. The officer gave me information about pressing charges and victim services. I filed formal charges that same afternoon at the police station. The woman was charged with assault in the 2nd degree, battery, and attempted theft. The officer told me she had 2 prior incidents at different stores in the past year. Both involved her trying to take items from other shoppers. One case was still pending. My sister drove me home after we finished at the station. She ordered pizza and we spent the rest of the evening watching bad reality TV. She kept checking on me every half hour to make sure I was okay. The blouse was beyond saving. I'd paid $30 for it and only got to wear it for 1 day. But at least I was safe. And at least my sister had my back when it mattered most. I'll always remember that job at the fast food place that served Mexican food. Looking back, I wish I'd never worked there, but at least I got to spend time with some friends from school. One of them I'd known since we were in 3rd grade together. The kitchen manager was this 27-year-old guy who thought he was the coolest person alive. He drove around in this obnoxiously loud car and would get right in your face and shout at you like that was supposed to be impressive. He bragged constantly about having 2 girlfriends at the same time, one who was 18 and another who was 35. He'd bring it up during shifts, talking about which one he was seeing that night like it made him important. But his terrible personality was just the beginning of the problem. After one shift, I overheard my friend and another girl who worked with us talking. They were complaining about the kitchen manager, and what I heard made my stomach turn. Apparently, he'd been harassing the girls who worked there for a while. He would grope them, touch them inappropriately, and ask them disgusting questions. My friend told me it had been going on for months and nobody had done anything about it. The general manager either didn't know or didn't care enough to stop it. The worst thing he did was follow one girl into the walk-in fridge, turn off the lights, and block the door while suggesting they do things together. She had to push past him to get out. I felt absolutely sick. I had no idea any of this was happening right under my nose. I knew the guy was gross and pathetic, but I didn't realize he was dangerous. Here's the thing about me though, I've never been in great shape, and I don't like sharing personal information with people I don't trust. The kitchen manager had no idea that I was a purple belt, an assistant instructor at this martial arts class my friend taught. He called it a mix of jiu-jitsu and some Hawaiian bone-crushing technique. I'm not sure how legitimate that second part was, but either way I'd learned enough to know I couldn't just sit back and let this creep keep terrorizing my co-workers. I've been training 3 times a week for almost 2 years at that point. My instructor always taught us that the training wasn't just for sport, it was to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. A few days later, I saw one of my friends heading toward the walk-in fridge. Right behind her was the kitchen manager. I dropped everything I was doing and followed them. When I got inside, she had her back pressed against the wall while he stood near the door. At least he'd left the lights on this time. I told my friend to get out of the fridge. She practically ran out. Now it was just me and him. I walked right up to him until we were face to face. He was a few inches taller than me, but I didn't care. He started trying to explain what I'd just walked in on, but I cut him off immediately. I told him that if I ever heard about him saying disgusting things to any girl ever again, I would beat the hell out of him. He tried to talk again and his face got all twisted up with anger, but I didn't give him the chance. I shouted at him, asking if he understood me. I said that if I heard anything at all about him again, I would hurt him, and then report him to the police. I told him to trust me on that. He tried to act tough for a second, puffing out his chest and taking a step toward me. I didn't move an inch. After a few seconds, he backed down and mumbled something about me being out of line. I walked out and flipped the lights off behind me. For the next couple days, things seemed quieter at work. The girls told me he'd been keeping his distance from them. I thought maybe he'd actually learned his lesson. Then a few days later, I got a call on my day off from a coworker asking where I was. The kitchen manager had changed the schedule the night before and conveniently forgot to tell me about it. The next day it happened again. My 1 in the afternoon shift suddenly became an opening shift, and I was late again. When it happened a third time, I got fired by some regional manager who was visiting while our general manager was away filming something for a TV show. The regional manager didn't want to hear my side of the story. He just said, "I've been late 3 times in 1 week, and that was unacceptable." It was obvious what was happening. The kitchen manager was getting revenge and I wasn't going to just accept it. This was the mid-2000s and online ordering was brand new. Websites weren't very secure yet. I also knew exactly when the restaurant was busiest and which items we ran out of the fastest, the ones that took forever to make more of. We always struggled during the lunch rush between 11:30 and 1:30. Dinner rush from 5 to 7:30 was just as bad. For an entire week after getting fired, I went to my grandma's house and used her computer to place massive fake orders. I'd make up random names and order hundreds of dollars worth of the most complicated burritos possible. Everything was extra sour cream and guacamole. Those turned into goopy nightmares that were terrible to roll. I ordered hard tacos with double meat, and we only made 4 or 5 sets of those per shift. I'd schedule everything for 5-minute pickup windows during the lunch rush or dinner rush whenever the kitchen manager was working. On Monday, I ordered $300 worth. Tuesday was $400. By Friday, I was ordering over $500 in a single day. Over that week, I ordered somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 worth of food that nobody ever picked up. All of it had to be thrown away. By then, none of my friends worked there anymore, so I felt absolutely zero guilt about the chaos. I heard through a former coworker that the wait times got so bad that customers were complaining to corporate. People were waiting 45 minutes for simple orders. The kitchen manager kept insisting they were getting slammed with fake orders but couldn't figure out where they were coming from. I heard through a former coworker that 2 weeks after I got let go, the kitchen manager was fired. Apparently, being the manager when thousands of dollars of food gets thrown away and customer wait times explode past acceptable limits is enough to finally get rid of someone, even if everyone already hated them. The regional manager came back and fired him on the spot. From what I heard, he tried to blame the online ordering system, but nobody bought it. I never told my friend what happened in the walk-in fridge that day. If I could do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. Also, my cousin might have used some tools from the tire shop where he worked to remove all the valve stems from the kitchen manager's car tires late one night. Pretty hard to drive to your girlfriend's houses when you can't get air in your tires. He supposedly had to get his car towed from the parking lot. I know this whole story sounds over the top, but it really did happen exactly the way I'm telling it. I've got plenty of other ridiculous stories too, like the time I arrested a drunk driver when I was still in high school. Actually, I did that twice. Maybe I'll share those somewhere if people want to hear them. My wife and I had been married for years when her childhood friend got engaged. We were thrilled to be invited to the wedding, even though it meant traveling halfway across the state and spending the weekend in a hotel. The bride had been my wife's closest friend growing up, and even though they drifted apart after college, my wife was excited to reconnect. The wedding itself was beautiful. The ceremony took place in a historic chapel with stunning stained glass windows, and the reception was held at a country club nearby. My wife spent most of the cocktail hour catching up with old friends while I stood beside her, shaking hands and trying to remember names I'd probably forget by the end of the night. That's when the older woman approached us. She was wearing a purple dress with a matching hat, and she had that look of someone who considered herself the unofficial social director of any gathering she attended. My wife's face lit up with recognition, though I could tell she was struggling to place exactly who this woman was. The woman gushed about how my wife had grown into such a beautiful young woman. My wife smiled politely and introduced me, explaining that the woman had been friends with her grandmother and used to attend their family gatherings when my wife was little. I shook her hand and made some generic comment about how nice the wedding was. We chatted for a few minutes about the ceremony and how lovely the bride looked. The woman asked my wife what she'd been up to since high school, and my wife gave her the abbreviated version of our life together. I thought the conversation was winding down naturally when the woman's expression suddenly shifted to one of conspiratorial interest. She asked us point blank when we were planning to have children. The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. My wife's smile froze on her face. We've been dealing with this question a lot lately, from my parents, from her parents, from random acquaintances who seemed to think our reproductive plans were public information. We tried every polite deflection in the book. We changed the subject, given vague non-answers, and smiled through the awkwardness more times than I could count. But something about this moment was different. Maybe it was because we were supposed to be celebrating someone else's happy day, not defending our personal choices to a stranger. Maybe it was the 3 glasses of champagne I'd had during the cocktail hour. Maybe it was just the built-up frustration of fielding this question one too many times. Whatever the reason, my mouth opened before my brain could stop it. I said loudly that it was strange she was so interested in our sex life. I said it louder than I'd intended. Much louder. The conversations around us stopped mid-sentence. Several heads turned in our direction. A woman holding a tray of appetizers nearly dropped it. The older woman's face went through a remarkable transformation. First, her eyes widened in shock, then her mouth fell open, and finally her entire face turned bright red. She looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. She stammered that she didn't mean anything by it and was just making conversation. She tried to explain herself but couldn't form a complete sentence. My wife grabbed my arm, though I couldn't tell if she was trying to steady herself from laughing or stop me from saying anything else. The people who'd overheard were all staring now, some of them grinning, others looking scandalized. The woman finally gave up trying to explain herself. She muttered something that might have been an apology or might have been an excuse, then turned and practically fled toward the bar on the other side of the room. We watched her go, weaving between other guests like she was escaping a crime scene. The moment she was gone, the man standing next to us burst out laughing. He'd clearly heard the whole exchange. He told us that what I'd said was brilliant, and that someone needed to say that to her. He mentioned that she'd asked his wife and him the same question at his niece's wedding last year. Other people nearby started chiming in with their own stories of the woman's invasive questions at various family events. Apparently, she had a reputation for cornering young married couples and interrogating them about their family planning. One woman said she'd been asked about her fertility treatments. Another said the older woman had actually suggested she might be selfish for waiting to have children. My wife finally found her voice. She said she couldn't believe I just said that out loud. I told her I couldn't believe it either, but that I wasn't sorry about it. She squeezed my arm and leaned into me. She said that was good because she wasn't sorry either. We spent the rest of the reception enjoying ourselves without any more uncomfortable questions. The older woman kept her distance, though I caught her staring at us from across the room a few times. When we left that night, several people stopped us to say they'd enjoyed meeting us, and more than one person mentioned how much they'd appreciated my response to the nosy question. The next morning, my wife got a text from the bride thanking us for coming. At the end of the message, she added that her grandmother's friend had complained about being embarrassed at the reception, and the bride had told her maybe she should think twice before asking strangers about their private lives. We drove home that afternoon feeling lighter than we had in months. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.